Hi there. Thank you very much to Donate for Refugees for hosting Voices of the Refugee Crisis. I'm joined by Jess and Margherita from Project Armonia. How are you guys doing?
Good.
Thank you for joining us. I was wondering if you could begin by just outlining who Project Armonia are and what it is that you do within the project.
All right. So I'm Margherita, and I'm the project manager at Project Armonia.
I'm Jess. I'm one of the founders.
Project Armonia was founded in 2019 and is a free restaurant run by refugees for refugees. And at Project Armonia, we work with big team of around 50 people, mainly coming from the local refugee community. We work with many different nationalities, and our team is very diverse. We currently serve around 1,000 meals per day.
Awesome. Yeah. And could you tell us why the food project was so important for you in setting up in 2019? Give us a bit of the history of why you saw food as a vital necessity.
Because the food provided in the camp is of completely subpar standard. It's usually out of date, moldy, sometimes comes with maggots in it. And it's one of the basic necessities that people need every day to feel more secure. So it was a big gap on the island in terms of aid provision. So we wanted to fill it, but also do it in a way that empowers the community itself.
Back in 2019, the camp population was around over 8,000 people. So it was also very complicated for the people to have actually access to food, because the food line was huge and people had to queue for hours to get food. And sometimes they were like queuing since 4 a.m. in the morning to get a meal. And then when they were actually there, the food was over. So it was really a huge gap.
Yeah. It sounds amazing. And in terms of COVID, I guess, has been the hot topic for the last 18 months or so. How have you found that COVID has affected life on the island, specifically among the refugee community?
So it has made things a lot more restricted. Last March, when countries started going into lockdown, the camp went into lockdown and people were restricted on how often they could leave the camp. They could only leave for vital reasons, like going to a pharmacy, going to a supermarket. And they also have a curfew that is different from the town, that they have to be back in the camp. And conditions are awful anyway. And then being restricted even more in this, like usually people will try and get out of these dire conditions where there isn't enough access to running water. They have to queue for 5 hours for food, and most of the people are in makeshift shelters in the jungle outside of the official camp. So usually they will go to town, they will go to a lot of the community centers or our restaurant to get out and escape these conditions. But when the pandemic hit, they were forced to stay in these conditions day in, day out. And it's the longer it goes on, the more that you can see people are tired and they're losing motivation, energy. I mean, it's the same with everyone all over the world, but in disgusting conditions.
And in terms of running your restaurant, what have you seen as the big differences between pre-COVID and the way you operate now?
So pre-COVID, we had a sit-down restaurant and people could come and escape the camp and sit down, enjoy a meal, take as long as they like, bring their family, because it's not possible to do that in the camp. And also local restaurants, people either don't have money to go, or a lot of them they do get turned away from. So it's vital for them to have this space. But because of COVID, we had to adjust our services to a takeaway restaurant, so we can still ensure that people get meals every day. But it's a one-in, one-out system, because we have to abide by very strict COVID measures to avoid any fines and also to keep people safe. And because our restaurant is generally quite small, now restaurants have opened up in Greece, but with the outside space that we have, because you're only legally allowed to be open outside, it's not big enough for the amount of guests we have per day for 1,000 people. So at the moment, we're sticking with takeaway just to ensure that we can get as many people a healthy meal as possible.
And beyond COVID, then, what are the some of the big changes that you've seen take place since you opened your doors in 2019?
Well, in terms of the people we serve, let's say that the camp population has changed over the years a lot. And at first, when the project was born, we were serving mainly the most vulnerable targets in the camp. So pregnant women, breastfeeding women, disabled people, medical cases. Right now, our guests are mainly people with residency or people that got a second rejections. So people that are outside of the system and do not have any other means to support themselves because they do not have access to the cash assistance program of the UNHCR. So this is our biggest target at the moment, as all the vulnerable groups are now currently being transferred to the mainland. And so over the year, you have to imagine that if in 2019 the camp population was around 8,000, now we are around 2,500. So it has changed a lot.
And what do you think is the driving force between so many transfers to the mainland and then also such an increase in second rejections or open cards being distributed?
So the aim is to get, because as Margherita was saying, the camp capacity, the camp numbers were around upwards 8,000-9,000, and it was overflowing. Every time you would go up to the camp, you would see a tent in a place you didn't think that could be there anymore. And since the camp management has changed, there's been this massive push to get the capacity down. So giving a lot of open cards to transfer people to the mainland, and giving a lot of rejections to try and deport people to get the numbers down so that people can be moved to a new camp that is in the process of being built. It's been a very long process. Every month they say that it's going to be ready next month, but it's getting to the stages that it is looking pretty finalized, but they're having some logistical issues such as water supply. So yeah, and also there are very few people arriving because of increased pushbacks. So people are actually being forcibly pushed back to the Turkish coast. There are some reports of people actually being on the island and then being taken off the island and put back in a boat and sent back to Turkey. So not only are people being transferred off the island very quickly, but there are no official new arrivals.
Okay, and you mentioned this new camp. Is there more information you could tell us about it?
So the information that have been shared are not very detailed at the moment. So we know that this new camp, it's very far from the city. So the current camp in Vathy, it's really close to the city center. So people can easily walk to town. While this new camp, it's going to be in the middle of nowhere, literally. And like between, just like in a very isolated part of the island, where also the weather conditions are much more inhuman than elsewhere. So this is where the new camp is located, and we are not sure yet when it will be ready to open and like when the actually camp move will be ready, but we imagine it to happen anytime soon. And
the latest information is June or July. They had a problem with the water in the camp. So the camp was mostly ready structurally, but there wasn't any water supply. So now they're drilling more holes, and I think they're going to import some water because they are really, really keen to move everyone to this new structure.
And how is this news being received or felt throughout the refugee community on Samos? What's the sort of general atmosphere around this camp?
Well, what they're most afraid of is being not able to leave the camp, because this camp is like all fenced out, so it's going to be very much different from the condition they are in at the moment, because as Jess said, most of the camp residents now live in the jungle, so in the unofficial part of the camp, while this new one, it's going to be like a closed camp, so movement is going to be restricted, and that's what the people are more afraid of. And then because there have been so little official information shared, people are just very worried about what will happen to them, and there are a lot of rumors spreading, but not official information yet.
Yeah, and people are very frustrated because they've been here for so long. Some people well over a year, and now they're being moved from one camp to another that is more obviously closed. So people are very tired and very frustrated.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned people being trapped and stuck in Samos for years while they're waiting for their asylum procedure to move forward. What have been some of the obvious failings of the current migration policy and implementations at the moment?
So at the moment, it's not a sustainable solution to just move people to another location that's more out of sight and pushing people back. It is just relocating the problem, and on a wider European scale, it's externalizing the problem to Greece.
Yeah, and I would say, I would add to this in general, like that leaving the responsibility to the countries that are at the border of Europe, such as Greece, and because of this Dublin regulation, having to process all the asylum requests when people arrive makes the system so slow and inefficient that then end up in waiting and being stuck on this island for years and years. And so, yeah, I would just say the inefficiency of the asylum system in general.
Okay, we've had a question come in from Laura Darwish that says, what will be the role for NGOs in Samos once refugees are moved to the new camp, if any?
So this is a bit of a discussion at the moment, because it's very hard to decide how to adjust services when there's very limited information going around with the camp. We ask a lot of questions, but we're not getting very strict answers. So some will relocate closer to the camp. Some will potentially work inside the camp. But the general preference, from what we understand, is to stay in town, because it's important for people to be able to get out of these closed conditions where they will be very trapped and very frustrated, for their mental health, to get them to town and be able to access services, not just from the NGOs, but also bureaucratic services or hospital, and just be able to get out in general.
And in terms of Armonia then, is there any indication as to what you will be doing once the camp has moved, or have you still not reached a decision on this yet?
We will wait and see what more information we can get, but the preference is to stay in town because we don't want to move closer to this structure. because we think it's important that people can get to town and can get out. And to answer Vanessa's question, it's a closed camp in the sense that there is very strict rules, but there will be the possibility to leave, but there will be a curfew. So people can only go out within certain times by registering their name, from what we understand. And also there will be a limited amount of people who can leave. But again, this information is changing all the time, but this is the general understanding that we have.
Okay, and I was wondering what your recommendations in terms of sustainable and meaningful migration policy would be, and what changes you'd like to see happen.
There we go.
Yeah, we truly believe that this camp policy is not a sustainable solution indeed, and that keep on building walls and fences is not the solution. So like legal channels to for people fleeing from war and persecutions, more European solidarity, and a reform of the asylum system to make it more efficient
and more humane.
Okay, I just see we have another question coming in quickly, sorry, from Vanessa as well, which asks about the new camp and whether or not it will be ticketed, and the minimal numbers compared to number of people living within the camp.
Again, this is information that we don't know yet, and we probably won't know until the move is closer. And same, like, this information hasn't been shared with the camp residents either. So it's, again, a case of rumors and information going around, but nothing is confirmed.
It must be a really frustrating environment to have to be operating in, where, I don't know, such drastic changes are being made, and yet there's no indication of when they're actually going to be made and how they're going to be made. So yeah, my thoughts and feelings go out to everyone within that community, and the difficulty you must have in operating in that space. Just looking at the comments, I think we're close to wrapping up and have got through most of our questions for the afternoon. But if anyone has any other questions, then please feel free to write something down now, and we can answer it in the next couple of minutes. But in the meantime, I was also wondering if you could give any indication as well as to what you see for the future of Armonia, and I don't know if there are any thoughts afoot for what it is you're hoping to do, or is the camp sort of taking up most of your attention span for the time being?
We had a question come in, Charlie. Right. And then
yes. Okay. Is it true that those being moved onto the Greek mainland will not receive benefits after July unless they are in approved government accommodation?
This is again something that is, but it's one of the rumors going around, from what we've heard from official sources anyway. Okay,
and what are some good sources to be following to sort of keep more up to date with this crisis as it's unfolding, and finding out answers to these questions that we've been posed?
So you can follow a lot of the NGOs themselves who work on the ground. A lot of them will post situational updates, but also a lot of advocacy platforms, for instance, Eurosmus Act is a good one, just to stay updated on things that are happening, because there are a lot of things going without being seen widely, like pushbacks, the move to the camp. It's something that is starting to happen now, but isn't getting enough attention for the severity of it.
I just see we have a question in from Mohammed Al-Ahmadi as well. It says, how do organizations deal with helping refugees in a good camp or in the new camp?
In the new camp, I think.
In the new camp.
Yeah, again, since it's not there yet. It's hard to think about how to readjust all our services when the new camp will be open. So now we are currently like looking into different possibilities and scenarios, but as said, like our priority is like, and preference would be just to continue to operate in town in order to give the possibility to the people to come to town, leave the camp, spend the day here and feel like human and not being stuck in this open air prison.
I think unless there's any more questions coming through on the comments, then that seems a good as place as any to jump off for today. But thank you so much for joining us. It's been really great to chat to you. And yeah, I wouldn't say I'm looking forward, but we're sort of curious and anxious to find out what does eventually end up happening with this new camp. So yeah, we'll for sure be staying tuned to your operations and everything that you're up to in the future, and wish you the best of luck in that as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Charlie.